Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. How are you this morning? Hi, friends. I hope you're doing okay this morning. There's goodness in your day. Peace and grace to you all on this Wednesday. Good morning. Hello. For a few folks to come along this morning. Hey, Gene. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing great this morning. Hello, friends. Hey, Karen. Good morning to you. Hope the Nutmeg State is treating you well. We got Granite Staters. We got Nutmeg Staters. Pine Tree Staters. Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. Yesterday was, that's kind, Jane. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. So, I'm glad it was a blessing. Glad it was a blessing. Good morning, friends. All right, let's get going this morning. So, it is weeding and watering. Beautiful. That is great. I'm a little jealous of all those who get to scratch in the dirt these days. I don't get to do a lot of, so that's great. All right, let's go. It is the 17th day of June at this 11:11, and I'm glad you're with us and glad you're here, that we might continue this journey together. We have a tradition here over these past summers is that where we have a summer read, and I've been kind of trying to find a good summer read. Last year we read A Severe Mercy, which is I think some people found a little heavy, so we're trying to find something a little lighter. So I've been going through some different reads and one is I revisited a book by Philip Yancey called The Jesus I Never Knew, which is just a really a wonderful book. But he makes really all kinds of different beautiful theological points, and it's probably not going to be our summer read, but it did bring me a little bit but there was a piece of it that spoke to me, and I just wanted to share it with you today. So this is from Philip Yancey's book. So Jesus, he's talking about kind of where Jesus comes from and the origin of how Jesus comes to enter the world. And so Jesus was not born in Rome, the seat of power, but in a tiny Bethlehem. He grew up not in Jerusalem, the center of religion, but in Galilee, kind of the butt of country bumpkin jokes. Jesus was born in Asia, like half of all babies born today. He spent several years as a refugee in Africa, where many refugees have lived, even to today. Poverty, a refugee, a minority race living in occupied territories. These were the places and the choices God made and the kinds of people Jesus would love so much. I think it's a beautiful illustration of, but not just the kind of people God would love so much. That actually makes me bristle a little bit, because it's always like, well, Jesus actually loves all of humanity. That there's not a kind of people that Jesus prefers, that God prefers for us. There is God's invitation to all of us to come to the table. Now there's folks who will come to the table and folks who won't. And that's a different conversation. But God's love for is is for all of humanity, and it is this entry point that God chooses that Yancey points out is just so interesting to me, because it is this, as however you understand it, no one comes to the Father except through me, or through, in the Ephesians text, this sense of through him we have both our access to one Spirit and the Father. That in knowing Jesus we come to know all of the fullness of creation and the fullness of God. That it is through this relationship. But I want to talk about this entry point thing, because what the end result is that Jesus is, well, the open door, right? Like, this is how Jesus has been understood, is I stand at the door and knock, or I am the open door. All these images you get from John about, come to me, all who are weary and laden and burdened, and I will give you rest. All this invitation of just to show up, just come to the open door. The door's not locked, and all that was set up by this entry point of God into the world in this way that we just talked about in Yancey's quote of, he's not born in Rome, he's born in Bethlehem. He's not born in Jerusalem, he's born in Galilee. He's born in Asia, but he spends time in Africa. He's not born into wealth, he's born into poverty. And this took me to say, what then does this say about God? And what does it say about how God enters into our relationship and our experience? Because I don't think this is just the one-off, but this actually gives us an element and a model of how we're to approach the open door, and how the open door has something for us in our approach to it. Because it's easy to say, well, Jesus is always there and Jesus always loves you, which not only is not only just true, but it's also kind of like a bowling ball without any holes in it. Like it's you can hold that, but kind of what do we do with it now? How do we get some purchase on it? How do we enter into this open door in which we're talking about? And I think these images of being born into Bethlehem rather than Rome, being born into Galilee rather than Jerusalem, actually offers us some qualitative things about that. But we have to understand some things about Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And that's what I want to spend the rest of our time on here for the last few minutes. That the place that God enters into humanity, I think, tells us something about where God is entering into us right now. And so this first is this image of Bethlehem. So Bethlehem, it was this little town outside of Jerusalem. And what happened in Bethlehem, now there are two different people, it gets translated two different ways. One is town of bread. Some people translate it as town of meat. But what happened in Bethlehem is Bethlehem was the place that all of the sheep, all of the lambs particularly, that were going to be raised for the Passover meal that would happen, they were raised up in Bethlehem. So Bethlehem was actually this little town of like 250,000 lambs. Like, that's what was running around. Like, if you want to imagine, because that's what they said in the high days of Passover, there would be about 200,000-ish to quarter of a million or so lambs that would be let in and would be eaten for the sacrificial meal. Like, so that, we're talking about a lot of lambs. So there's this, but it's the place that these little lambs are raised up and are nurtured. And to think about that image, how fun a place would that be? How smelly a place would that be? And this is the place where Christ is born into the world. And I think when we think about this place of, well, where does Jesus show up in our lives? And the lamb always being the ultimate idea of innocence, and the ultimate idea of, well, sacrifice as well. And so there's something about this little point within us, this little place, which is beyond our touching, and beyond our knowing, and beyond really our ability to even get purchase on, that just raises up our own innocence and our own desire to be better. I've met people in the throes of addiction. I've met people in the middle of high dysfunction, in the middle of rage, in the middle of pain, in the middle of all these things. And yet, if in that with them, there is still a place that is beyond even their own destroying. There is still a place in which innocence dwells within them, that kind of lammy little place, but also where all those qualities, those lammy little qualities exist, of innocence, of peacefulness, of grace, of humility, and that's the place that Jesus enters into. That's the place in us that Christ comes to. That it's not, again, it's not the places of power. It's not Jerusalem where we stand, when we're standing in worship with our, Sunday morning bests on, singing our hymns. I mean, those are wonderful things to do, and Jerusalem has this function. I'm not saying we need to burn Jerusalem down. But I'm saying that Jesus enters into that place in which we are largely powerless, where we are largely offering our gifts up to God, where we are where the symbol is the Lamb of humility and the Lamb of sacrifice and the Lamb of weakness. That is that place that Jesus enters in. So another place is that this notion of Galilee. Galilee is a big this juxtaposition between Galilee and Jerusalem. That it wasn't like Bethlehem versus or Rome versus Bethlehem. You can see the difference, right? The incredible place of power and capability and agency in the world, and Jesus is in the place of weakness and humility and our lamminess. But in Galilee, there's country bumpkin sense. That that Galilee. I mean, remember what Nathaniel says about Galilee. He says, "Can anything good come from Nazareth? But Nazareth's the town in Galilee. Like this is the country of country versus the cosmopolitan of cosmopolitan in Jerusalem." We like to think this. We like to think Jesus shows up in our big thing, and when we think big thoughts. We like to think Jesus shows up best when we have our head right and we're thinking clear and we're doing good things and we're operating our mechanisms even to the glory of God, but we're kind of we've got the little levers and we're making our sacrifices appropriately, we're doing all the right things, that we've built our temple and we are giving our worship. And while that has its function, our ego structures have our function in this world. But at the end of the day, where we end up finding Jesus showing up is in the wild places, as the poets would say, in the Galilean countryside, in the wilderness, in the country of our being. And I think this is why when we start looking for God, when we start feeling disconnected, one of the things we can do, and I think this just has a very practical reality, is that we can just get into the natural world. Because when we get into the natural world, when we go for a walk in the woods, when we show up and we admire the beauty of the natural world, what we're doing is we're being a little more Galilean than we are going downtown and admiring the great temples. That when we can, so when Jesus stands at the door and knocks, these places that he's knocking, these places that he naturally and in the very template of the incarnation has come into the world, is in the place of our own innocence and our own encounter with the natural world. And so, friends, if you today are looking for a place to let Jesus enter in, if you know the door is open, You know that he's always with you. You know that through him you have access to the fullness of the cosmos and creation of power. And if you're feeling disconnected from that, there are two very easy and very, well, easy, but there are two places that are baked into his coming into this world where God chose to come in, not where we go looking for him, but where the places he chose, the Bethlehem and the Galilee, the point of innocence, the point of sacrifice, the point of humility, and the point of the natural and the natural world. And that if you're looking for two places to go looking for Jesus, if you're feeling disconnected today, I want to invite you, go do something nice for somebody else. Go lay down your own whatever and turn yourself into a lamb for an hour. Go call somebody that you know can use encouragement. Go offer help to someone who needs it. Go, and maybe that someone is even yourself, because the place Jesus is being born into is not just for the healing of the world; it's for the healing of you too. If you're feeling plagued and weighed down by all the things of the world, that little lammy self is beyond your destroying, and it wants to give us the life of Christ. It wants to give it because that's the place that Jesus is being born, and the place of being raised up is that. And if that doesn't appeal to you, go touch the natural world. Go touch some grass. Go surround yourself with some natural beauty and see what happens. Pay attention and look for the places in which which Jesus is being glorified, in the cry of a seagull, or in the whisper of the wind through the trees, or of the warmth of the sun on your face. That these places will naturally, they're not take us to the one who made us. So friends, this is my hope for you today, that we might remember that it's not in the big places of power. Those are the places that are there to distract us. It's not in the places of Jerusalem and the places of great worship. Those have their function in our lives, but they're not the places. They're the places that are going to be redeemed, which are going to become the central focus. But the places that Christ is being born into this world, well, those are the Galilees and the Bethlehems. Those are the beauty of nature and our humble heart of sacrificing service for the good and the true and the beautiful in this world. I hope that you will know the presence of both and the presence of Christ in them all today. Peace and grace to you all, my friends, and we'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.